Hello, Africa youth. Hello, Nigerians youth. I have a question. I have a question. And I want you all to not drink some water. I want to ask you a question from tertiary university level to secondary level to all kind of level of education. I want all of you to ask your parents, your teachers, the so-called education system, probably the Minister of Education, if you can ask, why did they suddenly stop teaching history in school? I remember when, we are like the 90s kind of children, right? History education was like a mandatory shit back then, They, because the children that don't know their history are like, those grasses now when in a river bank or maybe like an erosion. There are some grasses that will grow by the river bank and then they bend to the river, and every time there's a movement of like the wave of the water or the flow, that's how the grass will be moving left, right, left, right, to be fluctuating constantly. If that grass was a living like a human being or an organism, that's the worst state it can be because there's no sense of nothing. It's just like you tangle 24/7, zigzag or whatever the movement is. That was intentional because the people that don't know their history is like formatting a memory card to put in wherever you want. That's what they systematically did to us, to our children, our younger ones, and all of us. If you ask a typical so-called uh, a graduate, I wouldn't even be surprised. All these so-called motherfuckers running around calling themselves, oh, professor. This is professors with no evidence. We are talking of motherfuckers that are here, spend their lives studying another man's story and running around with their plenty of white hair bro calling themselves professors. We are all slaves. What happened to our history? How come they no longer teach history to children in school? It's as if they just totally eradicate that. It's like removing people's names, surnames, history. Why did they fuck up our history studies in school? But I'm sure that the study of religion is a mandatory thing, right? You take away the history of a people, but they constantly teach you the history of religion that they brought. So I tell you, Africans, children, we are all African children. This isn't about just Nigeria. I'm talking to the whole African kids. The greatest path you will ever trade, the path to clarity, spirituality, destiny, future, strength, everything you could everly desire as a human being, as a child, to see is for you to go back and study your history. Sometimes when I sit back and look at how young people can sit here and argue, tell you the story of James, John, Malachi, every story from a book that was given to us. People can argue it, they can quote everything that it wasn't even in it. But if you ask them, what was the name of, like, it, even me like this, honestly speaking, in my own family that I love so much, I can't be sure that after my grandfather, which I saw, then the great grandfather, I don't know nothing about, you know. So I don't a common thinking human being. I don't understand why 90% of us, mm, this is no capping, don't even know our grandfathers apart from couple of old pictures and what we were told about, right? But we can tell a story, oh God damn it, of some book and history of another man. Something we have never seen, we just believe we can tell history. But if you ask a typical Nigerian educationalist, these ones now where they work out with their hunger, where they back with them, they talk about, oh, I came out with first class, we just, they don't, if you ask them common history of Nigeria from 1960 to even a year after independence, a year before independence, or we don't know. That was systematically designed. And since we are believers, we believers, for we shall see the kingdom of God for those who believe. Motherfuckers, we don't know nothing about our history. And I tell you, brothers and sisters of Africa, Nigeria, and all over the blocks, if you don't know your history, you don't have a future, you don't have a past, you have no stand, you have no inspiration, you have no spirituality, you have no God, you have not, you are a puppet. You are slavery is an understatement. So I want all of you young generation, which I'm part of, to start asking questions. Thank God for the so-called internet. You can't really trust whatever everything you see in the internet 100%. But I urge all of us across Africa to start trusting anything that has to do with the story of Africa. Just like his legendary, one of my best writers in Africa, Chinua Achebe, may his soul rest in the other world with the ancestors. I think it was him that said until the um the lion learned to start writing his story, every history and story will justify the hunter. You should ponder on that for a while. Every story of Africa has been tampered with, hindered, demoted, they just, so that we will not have knowledge. Because a person, I don't care how educated you are, how rich you are, how whatever you think you are, if you don't know your history, if you don't know what has happened to your past, you are just a pawn in the chess of the game of life. They intentionally take away history, replace it with some bullshit religion studies. What, you don't need to study spirituality. You don't need to study God. God is God. God is everything. Everything is God. We are pieces of God. Let's study our history, this generation, because something tells me that this generation we call Gen Zs possess some portal that an energy is going to manifest to right some wrong. I can see it. I don't know if you can see it. But I will advise every African kid and Nigerian kid, black all over the world, drop all these bullshit studies that you study. It's all waste if you don't know your history. Study your history. Know what has happened to you. Are like the fruit of a tree, and that's why you see Some tree bear all kind of fruit, disorganized fruit, bitter fruit, sweet fruit. The result is what is wrong with the tree. So whatever is wrong with us as an African children today is coming from the tree, which is our history, our parents, our forefathers, which they systematically replace with all this bunch of bullshit. So I want all of us to go back and study our history, know what has happened to our forefathers, know what has happened when we are not here, because the way forward is the way backward. You must understand where you came from before you know where you are going. It's the lack of our history that you see we are all pawn in every game across the world. And since our so called elders of this generation are all sellouts, our politicians and power and all these people are sellout, it's there for us to research. Let's read our history. One of those Bob Marley song, what was that song? If you know your history, you will know where you are coming from. I can't really, this Jesus, this black Jesus, left code and messages in all their work. And if you check it out, they were all pointing to the importance of history. So let's go back to history. Let's study our past so we can see further to the future. May the God of our ancestors give you reasons to take this message coming from a black brother who believe in the unity, the growth, the love, and the supremacy of Africa. You have no idea what the history of Africa holds. It's like it's the greatest masterpiece that have ever existed. Go back and study your history. Begin with anything you can find. Start with slavery, for instance. Go and watch what was done to our forefathers. Do you have idea how many of our fathers drowned in the ocean intentionally? Have you ever asked about the Arab slave trade? When you look at those history, like the Arab slave trade was one of the most severe slave trade ever. But the question that I ask now is when you go to the Arab countries, you can hardly, if not zero, you don't see no black man there. What happened to these our ancestors that were taken by the Arabs, at least in other continent countries like the America, the Portuguese, and they have Brazil, they have some pieces of place for these ancestors to exist till today, But if you look at the Arab country, there is no single sign of black. What happened to these ancestors that were taken by the Arabs? These are histories that will inspire you to choose a path. The African history will inspire you more than any religion book, any gospel will inspire you because in there is your truth. So I appeal to all of you, man. Study your history. Begin now. Small, 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 small. So that you can know the way to the past and the future. Because you see, life is not really new. Everything just revolve, right? Like someone that was here yesterday, like let's say you and your parent run a shop, and someone came yesterday and bought something on credit. It was your parent that were available, and they left, right, telling your parent they will pay, and because of their sinister, their evil or their manipulative ideology and master plan, they study and watch when your parents are not in the shop and you are there, and they came and say, give me something on credit, and if it's something you can do, right, maybe because of some imposted relationship or whatever, you will give to them. Why? Because you will not know that this person is owing your parent because you don't know. That's how. It, that's a glimpse of the importance of knowing your history. There are things we accept today. There are things we worship today. There are things we call upon today. There are things we look up to today if because we weren't here when this thing and what this thing means to our history, to our existence. That is the disadvantage of that's why they systematically erase history from history book. So I urge you, brothers, I urge you, study your history. It's there online. Replace all these religious studies, all these other studies that they brought to you and study your history. And you will begin to see the truth and you begin to see life differently and you begin to understand why suddenly from nowhere the ancestors there is an energy that is rising that even a younger child now is beginning to question what they have believed for a lifetime. The way to our future, the way to our liberation, the only way they will tell you that the future belongs to the younger generation that you will believe it will begin the day we start studying our history. May God of our ancestors inspire us and give us this insight to go back and study our history. Because a man that does not know his history, that does not know his past, is doomed to repeat what has happened. And that is the worst thing that you can do as a human being. May God help us as we embark on this uh, emancipation of our people in our own little way. We should all be a part of it. Let's relearn. You know, let's format all these garbages that they have filled us up with and leave our brain open to learning all our history so we can know who we are truly and begin the master plan of our freedom and liberation. At least if you don't know, you should know what we have as an African, as Nigeria, beneath our soil, given to us by the God of our ancestors. And look at our reality. Look at the way we are living. They will tell you slavery is over. No, no, it's just a transition. They just modified it. They stopped using the physical chain. You know, back then our fathers used to be naked and this. They stopped that. Now it's psychologically. Why? Because we don't know our history. There's a saying that in my language that "Elebiri yubu bongwan manare." It literally means you cannot chase away the mother goat and harbor the children goat. If you must keep both the mother goat and the children goat. That is when that charity or handout will be completed. That's what we are. We are like our mother goat that gave birth to us has been trashed. And now they are telling us they love us, the children good. How can you be comfortable in such harbor, in such uh handout? You just be like say you and your mother, parent are going through maybe you are displaced by maybe by gentrification or maybe flood or something. And some people came and said they are giving a handout and say we are only taking the children and leaving the parent out to die. What kind of a child will accept such a handout? That right there is the African story. If you are going to help us, let's help all of us. This time around, the good news is we don't need anybody to help us, but we as this generation need to find a way to help ourselves and our parents. And the only way to do that is to study our history, find out the master plan of the enemy from day one. Why do you think of all the great job that black people have done in economics, science, medicine, the law? Do you even know who is Timbuktu? Where is Timbuktu? Do you know who is there's a man from Ethiopia or Africa that is called what's that his name? The father of medicine, Emotech. Emotech. Do you know who is Emotech? You don't know, but you know James, John, Greek, this. How can you not know where you come from, but you are parading yourself, calling yourself educated, telling another people's story? Do you know who is Imhotep, the father of medicine, before they had this erected and replaced by all these other white people? Our the number one resolution to the redemption of African, especially the young African generation, is to study our history. In our history, there is spirituality, there is destiny, there is freedom, there is success. If we all go back and study our history, we will succeed in life. God help us. Use your brains, man. Ain't nobody coming to save you, my brother. You go pray, you go fast, die. Nobody is coming to save you. God has always given man the power from the beginning, and so shall it be forever and ever, to take your destiny by your own hands. And the destiny of Africa, the future of Africa, is in our history. Go back to it, my friend. Put on hold to all these garbages that they systematically designed to keep you dumb, and study your history. God help us. Uh, I think was it Patrice Mulumba or Thomas Sankara in one of his greatest quotes. He say, "I see an Africa where we will tell our own story, the story of unity and dignity, and yeah, and that dream will only come to pass when this generation begin to go back to studying the African history. Let's know who the real enemy was. Let's know why they gave us certain things. Let's know why they make sure we know certain things. How can a child know the story of another family and don't even know his father's name? That is the fate of the African kid. But the good news is we have the power to change that. Let's change that. Let's start small. So help us, God.